All right, Zach, I hope this turns out well enough that you enjoy watching it and that it sticks around for a while. So today I'm working a little bit on your groomsman's present here, so congratulations on getting married. And you'll see what it is in a little bit. So this is not typically how you would use a router, and I would not recommend doing this, but if you don't like your fingers that much, this is probably the way to go about doing it. So that's the kind of bevel it left. I think that's about appropriate. Maybe I'm going to go a little more aggressive on the actual bevel. So I'll show how I do that. And then I think we're about ready to do a test run. Get you guys straightened up here. Got a little bit of a tipsy-do. So I increased it a little, tightened it down. A little more on the set screw. See what we tear off now. So there's the original cut, the first one, and there's a little bit more. I like that a little bit more. I think we're going to go with a little bit deeper setting. I'm going to do one more. And that's what we're looking at for a bevel. I think I like that depth of bevel and depth of cut. So here we go. All right, since I'm holding two sharp objects, hopefully nothing goes wrong. Here we go. And that's what we look like for our bevel right there. You can see I've got a little bit of a tooling line, but that'll come out with sanding. But if I take it in my hand, just like that, you can see that I've got it pretty dang good to a point where it doesn't feel uncomfy in the hand at all. So we're going to flip it over and do the other side. And that should be the front edges, and then we have to do both back edges, and I think I'm going to do the back handle as well. So we're about an eighth done. With the handle portion anyway. I should note that the key to using a router is to make sure that you use one consistent direction the whole way. Don't get halfway through and say, oh, I missed a spot, and bring it back across. The blade's cut in one direction only, so continue in that direction. And just keep on going and try and stay as steady and as flat as possible. There's what that bevel looks like. And when you take it in your hand, you can just feel those little ridges. But other than that, that front curve has turned out really, really nice. So we're getting close. It's starting to look like a handle. So you can see I just pulled away just a little too short here, and I didn't quite get full there. So we'll go back and we'll fix those real quick. There's all of our major cuts that we got to do. So I think it's looking pretty dang good. Fits in the hand well forwards and backwards. So you can kind of see from this angle how much we actually took off, which doesn't look like much, but breaking those edges sure makes it comfy. And you can see we've got a little bit of the raise of the tool mark here. Like I said before, that'll come out with sanding real easily. There's our back end. Man, does that look sharp. So there we go. So that's all the routering we got to do. Now it's back to sanding. So I'm having you kind of look right down the pipe of my sander here. Pardon the noise, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these ridges off. So I'm just going to kind of lay this out until they get nice and flat. So my front leading edge takes off more material than my back edge on the sander. So I'm going to flip it around now. We've got all the tooling marks removed from here. I have one little one here and one little one here. But other than that, all the tooling marks are gone now. Doing pretty good. A couple small tooling marks here and there. But I think we're going to go to the hand sanding now. And there we get a pretty good look at it. And those pins look pretty, don't they, when the light catches them. So I think we're doing pretty good. And here goes nothing, right? So I'm just going to use the same surface. But instead of going to be using the sander, I'm just going to use a little bit of paper sanding here on some high spots that I can see. Diagnose them, see if I can get them out real quick, or if I have to go back to the grinding wheel. Mainly all I'm trying to do, I've got a couple slight tool marks left that you can still kind of catch your finger on. I'm going to try and remove those so that it's all one kind of plane, and that it's comfortable in the hand is the biggest concern. I'm not so necessarily concerned about the aesthetics of it, although it does look very good. I'm more concerned about how it feels in the hand, because if a knife doesn't feel good in the hand, you're never going to use it. Here's a better piece of sandpaper. So I've got most of that tool mark out. I can just still barely catch my finger on it, but the whole rest of the handle is looking pretty dang good. Make sure I can get you in view here. And pretty soon we're going to linseed oil it after I get these couple burn marks out of it from the router, and then you'll see how much fire and wildness is in these handles. Those are looking pretty dang toasty. So I'm going to put some linseed oil on them so you can see the fire that I'm talking about come out. So I just got my little dabber of linseed oil. And just apply it like that, back and forth. And you can see the fire come out and that wood. Those darks and those lights pop out. And it just comes super pretty instantly. Here, I'll give you a close-up. So I haven't done this top edge yet. See how it looks? And then put that linseed oil on and watch it pop just instantly. I'll do a real close-up here of this side. See, the more you rub it, you get it actually into the fibers. It just brings out all that color and all that grain. It collides really well with those brass pins too. Those brass pins really start to stick out and look pretty as well. Make sure you get the front of your handle and the back. And that's what we look like with our first treatment of linseed oil. I'd say that looks like a pretty amazing looking knife right there. Alright, so I have an old sheath here that's going to become my pattern. And this sheath is obviously just about perfect size. So that's what it's going to be. But obviously this sheath has an owner. So we're going to make a new one for this beautiful little knife. We'll give you a nice view in the color there. Beautiful little Damascus. This is the twist roll. And then the burl oak handles. That's how we turned out. So here we go. So, I know you like to carry your knife on the left side, so this is a right-handed sheath, so I'm flipping it around to create a left-handed sheath on the front side here, the swab side, and we're going to draw her out here, and then we'll go at it and cut her out. Should get me pretty close to having the front side. That's the back one, and then I'll do the next one right next to it, and then we don't waste too much material anywhere. So there we go, there we have both pieces, and then what we'll do when I actually start getting into cutting into it is I'll cut outside the lines. That's why I give myself a little buffer on the edges. This one doesn't look like there's a much buffer, but I already added in probably 5–10%. If I slide this all the way over to where it actually is, you can see that I have just a nitty-bitty buffer on it. So we'll be careful, we'll watch our lines, and we'll see where we end up. So here's my little leather cutting tool. I like it a lot. It's a lot easier to use than a knife. So I'm going to start out with the big one. I'm going to cut out, I have a couple lines marked. I'm going to cut out and give it just as much of a margin as I can. So without further ado, here we go. There we go. Got that side cut out. You can see I'm well outside my black line on everything. And we'll go sand these up, get it all smooth so we get rid of these rough edges, make it so that it's all pretty like that. This one should be a lot easier as it doesn't have a loop like this one, but it does have this one steep corner right here, so we'll just pay attention to that, but I don't think this one will take me too long. So, as you guys can tell, I've kind of changed scenery again, and I'm just finishing up on the sheath. I didn't do too much on the stitching of it because that's a lot of frustration for me to show. I got big hands and we're going through small holes, so didn't show too much of that because that would have been like a 4-hour process. We're missing a belt loop, and a knife like this needs a belt loop on it because it's meant to be carried around. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put a little belt loop right here, and we'll show you how we do that. So first thing you want to do when you're making a belt loop is you want to make sure that you're actually going to fit a belt through it. So you would think that you would just cut this length and this length for the slot, but since you actually have to push this layer back through one side or the other to actually make sure that the sheath will stay on the belt, you actually have to add in about a 1/2 inch. So go to your back here. This is actually a pretty wide belt to start with, and that's why I'm using it. It's of course not your widest belt that you'd ever put on, but it should get more than enough clearance. So there you can see we've got 2 parallel lines on it. So that's our minimum cut distance, and we're gonna go beyond that. I'm gonna draw some scribbling along here just to make sure that I know exactly where I wanna cut through it, because as soon as I make a cut on this leather, we can't go back. And here we go. Just after a little bit of scribbling, you can see my rectangle that I've made. These areas I won't cut. So this is going to be your tab right here. This center rectangle, excuse me, is going to be the actual tab that you have a belt and then the tab and then the belt again. Very classy old way to do a knife sheath with a belt loop. pretty standard, and I have a little bit of a walk on this line. This line's pretty straight, so I'll just make sure when I make this cut to kind of stay to the left of this line. So I have to be extra careful with this cut as I don't have my handy dandy cutting tool, so I'm going to be using very sharp jackknife as a substitute. Remember, this right line I said was pretty dang good for verticality. This left line walks in just a little bit, but I can actually see that I do have a little slight walk to the right line as well. So I've got 2 slight walks inward. So just going to pay attention to that as I cut through here. And stay to the right of that line. Kind of covering you guys up, but I want to make sure this is done right. So I only get 1 shot at this. Also, I'm going to add some light to you guys because I'm having a difficult time seeing too. Now we have some light on the situation. We press on. That is what we call a sharp knife. So let's check how we're doing. Yep, you can see we're coming through that leather, and dang, that's a nice cut. Somebody must have sharpened that knife well. Flip her around. Now how do we look? So we're at the point, this is the width of what it's cut through at, is the width of the belt right now that I've cut to length. As you can see, getting a belt through that would be very difficult. So now we have to cut and finish cutting up through here on our lines. So always when you're doing this, pay attention to how your line works out, because the center of the line will always get cut when you go through. However, I'm shaking the table with how much I'm having to push down to get through these end parts. However, the beginnings of the lines will not. So I just lengthened that line up all the way to here, and now you can almost get what looks to be like a decent sized belt through that side. Through the top end, I'm gonna cut a little down on the bottom end just to make sure I'm all the way through. Good catch. Apparently I was whacking the table a little harder than I thought. Okay, let's see if we get you back in frame. Yep. My tripod didn't like getting whacked. Now how are we looking? Well, we could get a belt through there. Take our belt test, and you see, even though the belt is far wider, or the slit is far wider than the belt, you still have a difficult time. So what I'll do is I'll just lengthen this cut up just a little more on the top end there. Good to check, good to know. Handy dandy pen. Give me another 1/4 inch. Now how do we look on the front end? We look pretty good. Went just a little bit off, perfectly straight, but not bad. Belt test is still a little rough, but you can see that it's got plenty of room once you actually get it slid through, that it works. So we're halfway done. I'll do a leather belt test here. So this is the leather belt test. Also fashion tip, don't wear black leather with brown leather. See, this is a square end, and that just slides right in. Look at that. That's how we do it. All right, you got the length for our one, so make it equal for the other. That's the distributive property. What you do to one, you must do to the other. Straighten out our line. Make sure it looks pretty. But get it perfectly equal like that. That'll do. So belt check. There's a belt, there's your loop. 1, 2, not much trouble. There we go. Pretty secure, doesn't like to shake around. So that's what we're looking at for a knife sheath. I think we got her done. And every great knife sheath has to have a good knife with it. Look at that knife. Looks pretty sexy. There we go. If you're going to be using it a lot, if you're going to be walking around, give her a squeeze and she sits perfectly in there. Probably won't fall out unless you're, doing front flips or something.